here we are at another episode of Growth Interviews, and I have two Seans here. There are actually two Seans that massively impacted my activity as an entrepreneur in the SaaS industry. Sean Ellis was the one that coined the term of growth hacking, and I've been following him since I was doing, online car insurance here in Bucharest, Romania, while Sean Sheppard actively changed my life with only 5 minutes of asking a few questions back at in San Francisco at Growth Marketing Conference. So
those are the best 5 minutes of my life, Bob.
Yeah, great. So let's get on with it.
I actually had a friend who was starting an internet company in the mid-90s, and I thought maybe I could invest some money in him. So that's what I started. I started with an investment in 1995 in his company, and I didn't have really money to invest, so I borrowed at an interest rate, put it all into his company, and then I joined full-time about 6 months later. And lucky for me, that ended up becoming a top 10 company in the world from a total kind of traffic perspective, and that was Uproar.com. And so that got me started, and I was leading marketing at the company.
I'm a baby of Silicon Valley. I'm an Intel Corporation brat. Everybody in my family, from my father and brothers and cousins and uncles and all those people all worked at Intel. I played golf professionally for a few years before I actually got a real job. And I only ever had one real job. After that, it just didn't take. And I've been an tech entrepreneur ever since. So that's been 25 years now. Well, I think the number one thing is they have to define a use case that generates value for someone, that solves a real problem. If you don't, you're never going to get paid for it, so why bother? People spend a lot of time focusing on their product and the cool tech and the bright shiny stuff that comes with that, but unless you can actually solve a real problem that's valuable and actually make a profit from it, it's not going to work.
It's people before technology. It's people are the missing link for a lot of stuff, and so I think so many people, especially they think in growth hacking, how do I start using automated testing and AI to figure out where to test when they're not running any tests already. So start with who needs the product, why do they need it, do they even need it, and then start figuring out what's preventing them from getting value from the product. Start running tests to get people to actually experience the value of the product more often. A lot of that just doesn't require a lot of technology. It's about empathy and understanding what needs are and how you can better meet those needs. Geography matters much less than it ever used to matter. For many years, Silicon Valley was a super valuable place to start a company because you had the networks and the information and everyone was connected. But increasingly that information's moved online, the relationships have moved online, and it's still harder to get funding in outside of Silicon Valley, but it's getting easier. But funding is usually not the problem. It's the expertise of knowing that you have to get product market fit before you can scale, and you have to test to figure out how to scale, and all of these things. That information has become pretty dispersed around the world, and so you have a lot more success outside of Silicon Valley now. And there's disadvantages to Silicon Valley. It's gotten super expensive to hire people. You have a lot of people competing for that talent and taking away people who you train up. And so in other countries, there's definitely in other cities, there's definitely advantages to that you don't face some of the problems in Silicon Valley and a lot of the information that's there. I think there's still a lot of probably the biggest advantage of Silicon Valley is that you're just immersed in people that are very motivated to figure out growth and businesses and innovation, and they move from all over the world to Silicon Valley, so you have kind of a special breed of people, and that's still, I don't want to completely discount the benefit of it, but I think the knowledge piece is now available to just about everyone.
So two things about geography. I would say, yes, I agree with Sean that the mindset of the Valley is something that people crave, and they also think that they need to go there to be close to their capitalists. So I think there's a real value in the first thing, and I think there's a lot of misguided perception on the second. I don't think great entrepreneurs should have to leave their homes and their family and their community and their customer base to come to Silicon Valley and live in one of the most expensive places in the world to be close to their capitalists. I think we now live in an era, because of what Sean said, where the world is getting smaller, it's getting flatter, and it's easier for people to get access to that kind of information and that kind of a network, and at least most importantly, that mindset where they are. And I think they should be focused on developing their own ecosystems before they worry about running off to the romance of the valley. So that's the one geographical question. The other view of geography is when you're taking a product someplace new, it's really important to be geographically close to your early customers. So if you're not where they are, you should go where they are and lay at their feet until you figure out how to help them and really solve a meaningful problem in a valuable way. Absolutely, entrepreneurism, like anything through modern mediums, has been overhyped and overly romanticized as something that's amazing. And I think people really need to understand, if they want to go this route, if they aren't being pulled in this direction. Like I've always said, entrepreneurship chose me, I didn't choose it. It's just always been a part of who I am. Like I said, I've only ever had one job and it didn't really go well, because I don't like working for anybody else or being told what to do. So it's really hard. It's an emotional roller coaster. It can be a very isolating and lonely experience if you don't know what it's like. The ups and downs are crazy. It's not some simple hockey stick like this. It's more like this. Like to say, entrepreneur is a French word for crazy person. So people need to know what the reality of entrepreneurship is. Once they do, and if they can handle that and they embrace it and they have a passion for it, then they are an entrepreneur already.
So yeah, for me, I think that entrepreneurship is a bit hyped because it should be. I think it's romanticized in the sense that the entrepreneur who can navigate through all of the challenges that Sean just talked about is a very unique, special person. And I think people think of the reason that they admire entrepreneurs is that they get to be independent and have the power and walk around with turtlenecks or whatever the heck the perception of what an entrepreneur is.
It's not a turtleneck. It's a zipper.
That's a turtleneck. But no, I do think though that I have a ton of respect for entrepreneurs. I think most people, when they get into it, they don't realize what they're actually getting themselves into. Sean talked about he likes to be an entrepreneur because he doesn't want to work for anyone else. I learned through the process of being an entrepreneur that I don't want to work for anyone else I knew before, but I also learned through the process of being an entrepreneur and a leader and a CEO, I actually don't want anyone to work for me either. One of the challenges...
People don't want to.
Yeah, so it's mutual. But really one of the challenges that I think a lot of people underestimate is that being an entrepreneur is not just sitting in a room and solving problems, but as you start to get a team around you, so much of your time that you would spend solving problems and figuring out the business gets replaced with managing people and hearing their concerns and getting them to buy into the vision and the dream and keep believing and keep working. And it's exhausting and it's hard and
it's often not why we become entrepreneurs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in a sense,
never something that we think about.
Yeah, and then the payroll itself is you're not working for someone. You're actually working to make sure that you can pay your employees.
You're working for a lot of people.
Yeah.
People don't realize that about being an entrepreneur. They see and they go, "Oh, you work for yourself, or you're the boss." No,
yeah.
I have a million bosses.
Yeah,
they're my customers, my employees' families. Their families, and everybody else who gets impacted by the money that flows through the businesses that we create.
And detaching to go on vacation is hard, but even just
What's vacation?
Yeah, going home at the end of the day is hard because it's sort of like, gosh, maybe if I sit at my desk one more hour, we'll figure out this business in a way that I don't have to stress about paying salaries. And then, of course, if you do start to figure out the business, then you're scaling and you have a whole nother set of pressures where growth and success leads to greed from your investors and pushing you're not pushing yourself hard enough. And then there's a whole nother stress is how do I maintain this growth rate? And so I think a lot of the romanticizing about entrepreneurs, it is a hard, painful process, and that's why I actually have so much respect for entrepreneurs who can stick with it and achieve that success. I just know myself personally, I don't want to go on that journey anymore. That is a difficult journey, and someone should really think twice before they go on that journey. That was one of the big things that I did when I decided to go out and be on my own, was I had to have meaning and purpose and mission in my own life of what am I trying to do, because otherwise if it's just like I'm going to go out and earn some money, you burn out fast on that. And so for me, the big picture qualitatively of what I'm trying to do is right now I'm trying to figure out how to effectively help companies adopt a growth hacking process. So particularly the ones that are already established and maybe have 30, 50, 100 employees or 1,000 employees. Beyond 1,000, I'm not even trying to help those companies really, but sort of that sub 1,000 of being able to help them rethink how they approach growth. And so my North Star metrics, so how do I take that qualitative and express and think of what is progress on that? It took me a while to figure out what this is, but I'm trying to collect growth rates that change. I'm trying to collect as many companies per year that I can take from whether if they're shrinking, if they're flat, or if they're growing, and get them to have a measurable change in the trajectory of their growth by adopting this approach. And so that's the success metric. Results are ultimately the thing that matters, but I'm trying to figure out how to help companies align their teams and their processes to better drive those results.
When we started GrowthX, the question that we asked ourselves is how do we get back at scale with the things that we know how to do well? And we identified the problem of the failure rates in the startup community that haven't changed in 50 years. And we had experience in helping people find the truth about where their product fits in the market, create functional learning out of the team responsible for doing that, and find out whether or not profitability would exist for them in a predictable, scalable way. And now my goal is to just touch as many people who share that worldview around the world and help them, help entrepreneurs, help innovators, and help those that want our help more than our money.
When I think about the trajectory of growth of the business, I'm not thinking about the revenue trajectory. I'm thinking about products that solve real problems, and how do you accelerate the ability of those products to reach the people that really need them. And so to me, it's not about the economic value. The economic value is a byproduct of solving a lot of problems in an economically viable way. But it's, I think if you chase the dollars, the same thing that I said, I could just go out and figure out ways to earn money, but I need that meaning to know that I'm truly driving impact on businesses. But I'm not trying to drive impact on businesses that I don't believe are doing something that's important. I'm trying to drive impact on businesses that have product market fit. So whether they're a new business, I'm putting less focus there because I feel like I've written a book that can help people navigate how to grow post product market fit. It's when they're not doing it right, how do they transform to doing it the correct way? That's the really hard part that I'm trying to figure out, and I'm motivated by the challenge of figuring that out. But again, it's about helping companies drive more value quicker, accelerating their ability to solve problems and deliver value to companies.
It's not exclusively money driven, although that is one unit of measure to determine the success of a product in the market. Or say in a mission-driven organization, we use the product market fit approach as the mission solution fit approach in a similar way. But if you can create value in the world and you can be productive, you can advance the humanity in a whole host of ways. And that's what I love about technology. The promise of technology is to make everybody's lives better. It doesn't mean everybody's going to use it that way. A fool with a tool is still a fool. But that's the purpose, and that's hopefully part of how we contribute back to the world.
For me, if I'm going to put all of that work in that I talked about, the challenge of being an entrepreneur, I want to make sure that I'm doing something that can be big, impactful, important, and really meaningful. And so the interesting thing that happened along the way of building Koala Roo is that through really just some tactical things I was doing for Koala Roo, a new business emerged that was kind of side by side, which was Growth Hackers. And I got to that point where I felt like I was going to fail at both if I tried to do both. The focus is so important. And so I discussed with my investors, and we decided that we were going to go all in on what we thought was the bigger opportunity, which is Growth Hackers. And so we built Koala Roo to be a good, profitable business, and one that a private equity firm could take over and continue to deliver that product. And then we could take the capital from that acquisition and pour it into something that I was actually more passionate about, and I thought had more upside as a business, and more potential impact I could do. And so that's, I wouldn't say that I was necessarily thrilled after the Koala Roo acquisition. I think it's one of those things that anyone who's been through an acquisition process, the reason I wanted to sell the business was to not have the distraction, and it ended up taking way longer and way more time and much more of a pain in the ass to do the sale. And so I think by the time that I did the sale, I was mostly just happy that I had the time and focus back to be able to put into Growth Hackers. What's been great with really everybody that I've worked with, people who are committed and treat their colleagues well. I have a really good relationship with everyone who I worked with that way. And you over the years, you're going to work with people who you end up not necessarily seeing eye to eye about, and there's integrity questions and all of those. But what I can say is that I feel really good about the way that I've treated people. I've always been very transparent and honest, and this is the challenge. And I think with Koala Roo, we actually only included one person with that one person with that training. We had a couple of salespeople that, for a period of time, focused, went there. They were kind of loaned to the company, but they appreciated that because we're still getting Growth Hackers to a point where they'd be able to earn commissions on it. So again, it was just a very transparent and honest process, and they could earn better commissions checks with the proven business of Koala Roo for that period of time, and it helped us because it took them off our payroll for that period of time. It was really one key engineer who, interestingly enough, some of the core technology for Koala Roo we had acquired from Kissmetrics, and he basically was the one consistent all the way through. He was on the Kissmetrics team and built the initial code that we took over and then commercialized. And then when we sold it, he recognized that he was needed on that front, and so we continue to have a good relationship to this day.
Number one is mindset, right? You need to be not just the chief executive or an entrepreneur, you need to be the chief learning officer. You need to be somebody who can learn quickly and effectively. You have to love the most objective truth possible. You have to care more about the market than your product. Those are key problems. How you allocate the limited time, money, and resources that you have. If you haven't been through it, you don't realize how quickly those things run out if you're not careful. So you need to be focused on identifying where your product fits in the market as quickly as you can. Spend most of your time there. And the third thing is they typically hire non-stage relevant people to work in their organization. So in all of my instances, the reason I like exits is because I'm really good at 0 to 1, taking something someplace new, right? And then I'm better at doing that. I learned that a long time ago, so I stopped trying to do one to end. And then I get somebody else to do the one to end, right? So that's what I'm good at. And that's not a skill set, it's a DNA, it's a characteristic, it's a series of attributes. Can you embrace ambiguity? Can you communicate well with engineers and humans in the marketplace? I like to make the joke. Can you embrace ambiguity, right? Do you love the learning? Do you have a passion for helping others through things like technology, if that's your entrepreneurial bent? You don't have to be in tech to be an entrepreneur. Those are the areas where I think people need to fix their mindset and be market focused. They need to be learners, and they need to allocate their resources correctly, and they need to make sure that they hire stage relevant talent.
So the one thing I'll build on there, though, is you said it's not a skill set, but I think once you do it enough times,
it becomes a learned behavior.
Yeah, exactly.
It does. But you have to have the right attributes to begin with.
Exactly.
Most people that don't have those attributes will not succeed in that environment. And if they do, they will be miserable along the way.
Yeah, and so there's a certain level of self-awareness. And so for me, what I learned in 2 companies from zero to IPO filing was that I hated the last few years on the way to an IPO filing. And so that's why it was that self-awareness of saying, I absolutely loved that first year where we have a product that has value. Getting from 0 to 1, I don't like. That's the part that Sean, and interesting, this is what we presented on today. He presented on 0 to 1. I like getting from 1 to 10, not 1 to N, but get the trajectory established. And then once you get beyond a certain point, that's where you're no longer rolling up your sleeves and doing the execution. You're building the teams, and you're doing so many of the other things.
You're working on the business as opposed to in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not that I can't do that. I know I can figure out anything. It's that I'm not uniquely talented at that, for one thing. I can do it, but I've gotten really good at that 1 to 10 stage, and especially since I decided that that's the area that I want to specialize in. I've now been the hands-on guy taking about 20 companies to market, or in the early days of about 20 companies, and I've developed much more of a playbook, not in what I do, but in the order in which I try to figure out things, and that ultimately then I know how to grow each business, and each business, how it grows is going to be pretty different, but how you figure it out is surprisingly similar.
And I think the lesson there is that we both understand what our superpowers are and how to apply them to something meaningful. Not something you're passionate about, but something that's purposeful and meaningful, because that's lasting. Passion fades. Meaning lasts forever.
In each one of the companies that reached billion-dollar plus valuations that I worked on, natural word-of-mouth organic growth was the biggest driver of growth in those businesses. And that's what happens when you have strong product market fit and you have a really good way of taking a customer who needs that product and delivering them into an experience that they keep using and they tell other people about. And so the only challenge in all of that is, how do I get those initial people in those expensive channels to come in and use the product? And the more efficient you are at converting, monetizing, driving referrals, the more you can spend on that initial acquisition, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's an auction, it's a marketplace for attention out there, and those costs wouldn't be so high if there weren't a lot of companies that could pay that money for that attention and profitably use that attention to build businesses. And so the only way you can compete in those more expensive channels now is to be really efficient at acquiring customers who need your product and getting them to an experience where they create real value in your business, both through referrals and through staying active and generating more money from those people. So I think it's more important than ever that you're driving improvement across all parts of your business, and acquisition is just one of those levers. And I think you can get creative within those channels, but it's very difficult. I mean, even 10 or 15 years ago, so probably 15 years ago, when I was trying to grow LogMeIn, it wasn't that competitive in Google AdWords, but we had such an inefficient onboarding into the business that I couldn't profitably scale that. And it wasn't until we figured out how to make our product very easy to get started with that I could turn around and spend millions of dollars in customer acquisition profitably through Google AdWords. So now it's just that the bar is set higher and you have to be even more efficient to be able to compete in those channels.
Yeah, I think everything at the early stage is going to require more work, more effort, more costs to learn, so that eventually you can drive those acquisition costs down in other ways, and then create the opportunity for building your brand through word of mouth, as Sean said. Because your brand ultimately at the end of the day is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. And that's and word of mouth is the ultimate reference. Everybody wants to buy and use things that their friends and family and the people that they trust, know and like use. So create an environment where people feel confident enough to share their value they derive from you with others. I think we're going to get more and more niche individual entrepreneurs serving a very finite use case and being successful through that. I know with our GrowthX Asia operations that are based in Kuala Lumpur, the entrepreneur community there that's growing the fastest is the individual e-commerce entrepreneur. And they are serving very small niche markets. No, they don't have to be massively scalable billion-dollar companies like Sean just rolls out of bed and builds. But to be successful for them, it's again about taking care of themselves and their family and their community. And if they can do those things, that's success.
Yeah, I agree that.
So he's correct.
Yeah, for once.
Was it right?
No, that basically.
Did you get that on tape? Okay.
Within the niche, you have to be able to really understand that customer better than the generalist e-commerce company. But overall, I would say that a lot of the e-commerce businesses, I don't think will be successful because they're not providing unique value. If they're literally just another place to sell the same product and they're trying to somehow do it more profitably than the other guy, it's very easy to price compare shop on the internet, and I think at the end of the day that's where an Amazon in the US is going to be dominant. They have economies of scale and Prime and all these things that make it really hard to compete against them. So part of it is, both Sean and I have talked about, it's about creating value. I don't really look at anything as being mistake. I mean, everything that I know today is through choices that I've made, and so I don't really think, the same way that I don't think of failed tests and successful tests, is that you learn from everything that you do, and so I really don't feel like I have any big mistakes that I regret.
Yeah, I think the rearview mirror is smaller than the windshield for a reason. I keep looking forward. If I regret anything, it would be any harm unduly or unintentionally I've caused to any human in the history of my life. Outside of that, everything else is learning experience and an opportunity to continue to grow. I'm really loving this Romanian entrepreneurial ecosystem. I see a lot of passion. I see a lot of super smart product and technical acumen from the community. I see a ton of great energy and enthusiasm for startup technology, and I hope it continues to grow. I think Bogdan and the group at How to Web has done a fantastic job. The venue's been amazing. Other than the company over here, I think it's been outstanding, and I look forward to continuing to support its growth in the future.
Yeah, so for me, I didn't know what to expect from Romania or from How to Web. I just knew that almost 30 years ago, when I was in Romania, it was a very different place than it is today. And I was a very different person. I was a stinky college student with long hair and fuzzy face and a big backpack. And,
hey, that's all back in now,
Yeah, exactly. So I was the typical Silicon Valley entrepreneur. But no. So I think that I have been really impressed. I knew from my time of living in Eastern Europe and starting companies in Eastern Europe that there's a general energy and creativeness, that there's so many good math people and creative people across Eastern Europe that I wasn't surprised to come here and see a really good entrepreneurial community, but I can tell you that I think this event is probably one of the best produced events that I've seen. There's a great energy with it. There's the venue is awesome. I've been really impressed with the speakers. Especially the first speaker. That was me. I'm joking.
I was sleeping. Is that you?
Yeah,
I couldn't see you through the smoke.
I was sleeping as well.
On the stage.
But no, I think that even as we were walking out, I was listening to Marcin speak, and I was like, he starts talking about a North Star metric and OKRs. This is something I'm trying to reconcile the two right now. I wanted to sit in and listen, but then I wanted to also come and speak with you guys. So I think there's so much great learning to be had here, and I'm excited that I got to be a part of it.